What's up, Tycho World? Welcome back to another banger video by your boy. It's me, Nifty, and I'm making another tutorial for SVT tool. So this tutorial is meant to be a more advanced tutorial. If you're looking for the basic concept of how to use this tool, please go to my other tutorial where I go over that in a bit more detail. I'm not going to be showing you how to use the tool here. I'm just going to be going over some of the options he's added since that last video. If you just got here from the last video, you notice that the tool is a lot different. This is version 1.0.1, and yeah, there's a lot added. But don't worry, the basic functionality is the same. You just have more advanced options. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that snaps have been added. So this is something that some other tools use. Some other tools, in fact, depend on because they don't have a hits option. So if you only select snaps and you specify a snapping, let's say 1/5, 1/16, 1/2, 4/1, if you're just trying to apply things to the bar lines, because that is the option that this replaced, it will just apply SV to that snap. It's pretty simple. So moving on to just exponential SV, we'll uncheck snaps because that can make things kind of messy. So exponential SV is something that was in the last tool, but it was over here in the advanced options. It's now been applied to the applied section. I've been using it in every single map just because I think it looks a lot better. It, in my opinion, is what every tool should be using, and it just corrects for how Tycho calculates the SV values, because the way calculates SV values is not actually representative. It's not like correct in the way it calculates them. It undercalculates the differences at higher BPMs. So moving on to Polynomial Sv. So you'll notice that there are tooltips now, so these can be pretty helpful if you're ever lost. Just hover over something and it will tell you what to do, or watch this video. So Polynomial Sv, the recommended tooltip says you can use 0.5 or 1.0 for slowdowns and 1.0 to 2.0 for speedups. I wouldn't recommend using 1.0 because that is just linear SV. You're not actually doing anything with that. But it is right in using 0.5 for slowdowns. What that will do is round out the end of the slowdown so that you don't get as much of that overlap as you usually would get with using exponential or linear slowdown. And using 2 or 3 or 4 or fucking 5 on speedups is really nice because it creates kind of a hook effect. This can be visualized using Desmos. It's in the intro and usage section of SVT Dev Discord server, and it basically creates a hook effect. It makes the beginning of the slowdown a lot slower and the ending of the speed up. The beginning of the speed up a lot slower and the ending of the speed up a lot faster. I've used this many times. I used it in my TWC maps. Use it everywhere, wherever you want a really dramatic speed up. Sinusoidal SV is fucking weird. I've never used this in a map. I just think it kind of looks ugly. It kind of gives like a tumor effect to your SV, but feel free to play around with it. From what I've seen, it might work for slowdowns, but then again, I've never used it, and I probably won't use it unless I'm feeling quirky on some weird-ass map one day, but that's there. Flat SV is very useful. I think it might be the most useful thing in this tool. So what flat SV will do is it will change the SV value, of course, by a static value. So if you put in 1.0 here and you select 2 inherited lines that are sandwiching the section you are trying to change, it will add that value to that section. So if you make this value negative, it will subtract that value. Pretty simple. You probably won't ever want to do 1.0. I usually do like 0.1 or negative 0.1 or something like that. But if you are feeling a little bit more advanced, then you can turn on the multiple scaling. So what this will do is it will preserve the effects you've created. So if you have a complex SV section, such as this, like a lot of effects at once, and a lot that can be changed, a lot of detail going into the SV you're making, then you're going to want to be using SV scaling, because if you make this slower by a static amount, it's going to dramatically decrease the effect that you're going for. And this can be seen in this map. So what I use for this map, I believe I use 0.9 SV scaling, and I had the effect that I wanted here, you know, the kind of waterfall effect, but later on I wanted it a little bit slower. So if we go back here, you'll see that this starts at 1.4, goes down to 1.2. So those are the original values that I created. But if you go over here, you'll see the effect is preserved. It still looks good. It's still exactly what I want. But now it starts at 1.27 and goes down to 1.10. These values are so odd because I didn't manually input them. I didn't decide to make it go from 1.27 to 1.10. I instead applied the SV scaling to it. And so now the differences between these, which looks like 0.06, is basically proportional to what they were over here. So the differences between these are 0.07. So you can see that it is 0.1 less than it was before. But it's overall slower. It preserved the effect I was going for. And if I used the static whatever, it would look a lot worse, because if you just made all of them slower, that wouldn't actually change the gap between them. They would still have that large SV gap. And so it would be a lot more dramatic than what I would be looking for. And this goes the opposite way. If I was speeding it up, if you just add a static value to all of your SVs in a complex section, and you're going considerably above the initial values, it's going to water down your effect a lot, because the relative difference between the notes at a higher velocity needs to be higher if you're looking to have the same effect as you had before. So hopefully that's enough explanation on that. I think it's really important that people understand how the SV scaling works and why it's important to use, because I see a lot of people trying to make SV maps without having the necessary knowledge to make them the most efficiently they can, and the best they can. And I think this is a really important tool for efficiency and just for making good maps. Linear volume works the same as it always has. You can apply it to any of these. No real change there. So I think that covers all of the changes that have been made to the tool. Hopefully this has been a learning experience for you, and hopefully this is the last major iteration of the tool. I know he won't be making updates in the future, but this should be the final word in tutorials for a while. So thanks for watching, and happy SVing.